Good morning, Abundant Life Church. This is Pastor Chris, and we're going to be continuing our study on Romans chapter 3, verses 9 down through 20. Now, we talked last time about the idea that Paul is saying none of us are any good. Nobody follows God. Really, none of us are worth saving. Did he really mean that? Human nature can't be as bad as he's making all of us sound, is it? Maybe what Paul was talking about here was not everybody. He just meant the ungodly, the people who don't want to follow God. He didn't mean us. Well, that's just it. He did mean everybody. His whole point was that even the Jews who claim to be godly, even the Jews who claim to obey the law, who go to temple, who pray 3 times a day and stay away from sin, even those guys pretty much rotten. Nobody was good enough. And the problem is that we really can't even argue that we're good enough and that we should be judged by our merits because even the logic of a system of salvation that depends on our merits, on our goodness, it's still not going to work. I've talked about this before, but let's for argument's sake that not all of us are bad. And some of us are going to be saved because of our goodness and we're kind of, nice people and we let people merge ahead of us in traffic. Okay. But this takes us back to the same old problem I've talked about before. You got to have a line. You have to have a line to say, okay, these people on this side of the line, they are good enough, they're going to heaven. These people on that side of the line are not good enough. How do you determine where that line is? How do you determine who's good and who isn't? Who gets to judge? God does? Great. Now we can worry about what our final grade is going to be. Is God going to like me more than that guy? As I've said before, if it's a merit system and the line's right there, if you're just over the line, you just made it. You are close, you are the worst person in heaven, and you're a lot closer to the best person in hell than you are to the best person in heaven. Does that make sense? I don't think a system like this works. We never really get to know if we're saved or not. Salvation becomes a beauty pageant that we hope we win, and it doesn't work that way. So the alternative is, okay, that we're all evil and we're all doomed. That doesn't work either. Maybe we're approaching this question from the wrong angle. Maybe it's not about how good or bad we are. Maybe it's about something else. So let's start to find the right perspective by seeing what Paul says about the law. Right? The law, because the law was what the Jews said, this is what determines who's good and who's not. The law was there to determine how bad you were. That's the thing. That's all the law does. The law does not determine how good you are. It just determines how bad you are. The law is not meant for reward. Trying to be good enough so that you earn your way into heaven is bound for failure because the law was never designed to work that way. It's just like laws that we have as well. Have you ever been pulled over by a police officer? And he takes that long walk up to your car window and you're nervous and you have your license and registration out. And he says, well, I've been following you for some time. I notice you're driving 5 miles under the speed limit and you've signaled all your turns and you're wearing a seatbelt. Here's $40. Does it work that way? Do you get rewarded for keeping the law? No. Laws are designed to punish, not reward. Your reward is you stay out of jail. Look at verses 19 and 20 here. Now we know that whatever the law says, it says to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be silenced and the whole world held accountable to God. Therefore, no one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law. Rather, through the law, we become conscious of our sin. No one's going to be declared righteous because you've kept the law. Again, you're not going to be rewarded because you've obeyed the law. Let me see if I can phrase this right. You don't get rewarded for not doing what you're not supposed to do. All right. The law only succeeds in the very thing it was designed to do, to point out how bad we are. That's it. It's not supposed to save you. It's not meant to save you. In fact, the only promises in the law doesn't promise salvation. What it promises is if you obey me, I'll protect you from your enemies and I'll bless your crops. That's it. Even Jews who thought they'd be saved because they kept the law had actually blown it over and over, and the law keeps pointing that out. And guess what? Even Gentiles who never had the law still sin. There's no one who can say to God, I'm so good, look at my record, you have to let me in, you owe it to me, Lord, because of how awesome I am. We're not good enough, we're all condemned. Okay, great. Now what? Paul is saying here our sins make us fall short. We're not good enough. We're doomed. But hang on. We've been looking at the issue like, again, it's some kind of beauty pageant where God's going to grade us on the curve and he's going to take the best of us. As long as we're better than average, as long as I'm better than that guy over there, we'll get in. That's how we see the issue, but it's not how God sees it. How does God see it? The sins we've committed drove a wedge between us. In fact, that's the entire story of the Bible. It starts in the garden. God had fellowship with man. Man sinned, and sin separated that fellowship. Now, what do? We've got to figure out a way to get over that gap and get back to God. Well, we can't do that. We can't get to God. God has to come to us. That's why he sent Jesus. He sent Jesus to take care of our sins. You see, all sin that we commit, no matter how major, no matter how minor, all sin is an affront to God. Every sin is saying, you're not doing it the way I want you to do it. You're not following me. And because all sin is an affront to God, only God can forgive those sins. I cannot forgive sins that you commit that weren't done to me. Because if you steal my car, I can't, or I'm sorry, if you steal your neighbor's car, I can't go, oh, go ahead and keep it. It's not my car. Only your neighbor can forgive you. If I say to you, here, I want you to try an experiment, okay? As your pastor, if you're watching this, I want you to know I hereby forgive the balance of your mortgage. Don't have to pay it anymore. I, with the authority I have as your pastor, hereby forgive the balance of your mortgage. Good news, huh? Now, go down tomorrow to the bank when it opens and explain to them why you're not going to be paying the mortgage anymore. Well, my pastor said I don't have to. What are they going to tell you? I don't have the authority to forgive your mortgage because you don't owe me that money. All sin is an affront to God. So only God can forgive sins. With that in mind, is it fair for us to say, hey, God, guess what? I've decided that you have forgiven me. So all is well. We can't decide that God is going to forgive, only he can. So the question on salvation isn't, are we really so bad? The question is, and the question is always, and this is what we should be focused on. This is everything. Who can forgive us? Who can restore our relationship? Who can take care of our problem of sin? We can't. So God has to. We'll talk more about this next time. Until then, have a great day.